Would you eat your food if you knew it was 10 times the legal limit of toxic substances? If the answer is no, then maybe it's time we show everyone where they can shove their tampons. First, if you're enjoying the podcast, then please do support us. You can find us on Spotify and you can find us on YouTube. Please subscribe and click that little notification bell so you never miss a Fine-ish Friday.
Well, Abby, as you know, we have just had our first ever viral TikTok video, and it was a video about tampons.
I never thought in a million years that talking about your bloody period would be the thing that would hook everyone. But then why not? Because obviously, like, if you look at the population of the world, it's actually a higher population of females. Therefore, it's a pretty big conversation to have, actually, isn't it? I mean, for anyone that's listening to this, obviously we're not used to this sort of stuff. So when you start seeing a video kind of like creep up and creep up and creep up, like, Hayley, how excited do we get when a video reaches 1,000 views?
Where they're like, woohoo, celebrate.
Literally, like, screenshotting it, like sending all of the emojis, like, first video with 1K views. And then this one was just creeping up and up and up and up. And it was really exciting, super exciting. But then it made us realize, like, shit, this is a really important conversation. And actually, in our last episode, it was such a fraction of the episode, wasn't it? And so we thought, okay, we need to carry on this discussion because people are outraged by what it was in that video. Do you want to explain what it was? To anyone that's not seen it, do you want to explain what we said in that video?
So in the last episode, we tested my knowledge of when tampons, which so many of us use on a monthly basis, were first tested on human blood. And I was shocked to find out that they were only tested on human blood in August 2023. So we're talking not even 3 years ago, people, even 3 years ago, were tampons tested on human blood. So I uploaded the video of me being completely shocked as Abby went and gave a little bit of the detail of the particular study that did the test. And I think in the comments, it was mostly women. We got to about 130,000 views. I'm going to guess a lot of those were women as well. And I think a lot of people were as shocked as I was. We did have a few people say, well, are you surprised? Because, you know, we know that women are basically not considered when it comes to research and things like this. But yeah, a lot of the women in the comments were like, what the actual fuck? Get me off this planet. And we're just there like, take us fucking with you, please.
Did you see that comment though?
Yeah, take us with you. We don't want to be here either.
Like, I want to get off this planet. And I was like, yeah, take us with you. Take us with you. I was gobsmacked as well when I heard this. It was tested on human blood. And actually, like, now that I've deep dived into it further, realistically, that's still not enough. That's still not enough, everybody, because menstrual blood is different. It's not quite like the blood that goes through our veins. And so it's great that it's actually tested on a bodily fluid rather than just saline solution and water. But it's still not actually tested on bloody menstrual blood. Bloody. Like, literally, it's the thing that they're designed for, which is to try and capture and retain your period blood so it doesn't come out of your fanny. And they still, if we assume that they still have, I think they haven't actually. When I looked into it, I still don't think they've actually tested on menstrual blood. So in 2026, they have still not actually tested tampons on your bloody period, pun intended. It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. So we got so excited at the fact that they'd done it on human blood finally, but it's still not right.
And the test was actually only looking at absorbency of the tampon itself. And then it found that actually it doesn't absorb as much as people assumed they did. And I thought that was funny because I think there was a comment or two as well saying like, oh, that's why they're crap anyway then. You know, they're not actually that great at absorbing blood. And I'm like, yeah.
So actually, people might be going around, you know, like, we have all been there where we have to get the super jumbo magnificent size, which basically feels like you're just shoving up like giant marshmallows up yourself. And everyone's like, oh my God, you know, my period's so heavy. I need to have one of these like ultra super ginormous absorbent things that go up there. And actually, it's like, no, it's literally probably just because the normal tampons that are like regular just are shit at capturing or absorbing your menstrual blood because they're not bloody tested with it. So maybe, I mean, there are definitely some people out there, obviously, who need like the super duper voluptuous tampons. But maybe if they actually tested on menstrual blood, a lot of people wouldn't actually need those big old thick boys inside their fannies. Some will, but maybe some don't. So it's basically like the absorbency, and it just baffles me that we are in 2026 and it's still not actually been tested on menstrual blood.
I have a theory.
Oh,
I
okay.
wonder if they do that on purpose, right? They make them so that they don't absorb very well, because then you have to get through them more quickly. Therefore, the rich fuckers are making more money.
Do you know what? That wouldn't bloody surprise me. That sounds very much like on corporate companies, doesn't it? Like exactly them to a T.
Mm-hmm. I reckon they probably found ways to make them better, but they've been like, nah, that's going to lose us a few billion a year. So let's keep them a bit shit. Let's keep the women bleeding through their pants. Yeah. We don't care. We want to make the money.
Yeah, exactly. But God forbid we actually did bleed through our pants, guys, because we would be shunned. Absolutely shunned if we did. But yeah, no, that wouldn't surprise me, to be honest with you. It's the same with like acne products, for example. Like all of this research that goes into things like acne, you would think they would have found something that probably would have just like sorted it out a little bit realistically. But a lot of skincare products, I mean, maybe not like quite like the prescription stuff, but skincare products, good sometimes, but they're not good enough. And I feel like they could be, and for some reason they just aren't making them that little bit better, because they know people should buy these creams, they should buy these face washes, but they need to keep buying them, because what's the point in them doing something and then they don't ever need the product again? They want to make it so you have to keep buying the cleansers, buying the toners, the moisturizers, whatever they want to fuck you put on your face, because they obviously want the money. So it would not surprise me if that's what's happening with tampons.
I've heard similar theories about cancer research, unfortunately, as well, where there have actually been cures found for lots of different types of cancer, yet the big pharmaceutical companies and the big medical industry, they don't want people to be cured. They need people to be sick so that they can continue getting all the insurance payouts and things. So, it really wouldn't surprise me.
I really hope that's not true. I've heard that as well. But then at the same time, I'm like, is it, or is it just like people start taking off with something and then it spreads like wildfire? Because like it would be absolutely devastating if it was true. So the easiest thing is to believe that it's not true. But I have a feeling it probably is, to be honest. But yeah. So it would not surprise me if that's actually what they're doing with tampons as well.
Think about it. So half of the population is female.
Yes.
And
a little bit more than half, by the way, as well. Just so you know, everybody. We're just slightly more females than there are men. Which makes everything worse, actually, when you look into female problems and it's just like, we are the dominant fucking population.
Yeah, when you put it like that, Jesus. So thinking that we're just over half the population, do you know roughly what the average age is of a girl starting her period in the UK?
I'm pretty sure it's dropped, hasn't it? It's lowered. I think like when we were younger, I think it was like 13. Whereas now I have a feeling it's 11.
Okay. So from what I read, it's around 12 is the average, but it can vary. So the healthy range is from the age of 8 up to the age of 15. So starting your period within that range is considered normal and healthy. So if you think about it, you could have an 8 or 9-year-old who is starting her period and, I don't know how I feel about giving a child that young a tampon. But think about, we've got young teenagers, preteens potentially, that are being given sanitary products to wear. I don't know how many of those children that young would be given tampons, but I'm going to guess some of them probably will, because tampons is kind of a go-to. And the sooner you start using them, the better, apparently. I hope people are watching the video because they can see what I'm doing with the quotation marks. But we've got a lot of people buying tampons on a monthly basis. And I think the more we've learned over the last few weeks about them, the more angry we are.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think tampons are probably still one of the leading things that people will typically tend to wear to help with their periods. I like to think that with the newer generations, they're opting for things like the moon cups and the period pants, which I'm totally here for, by the way, guys. But I think while there is still, a population of older women who are still having their periods, and millennials and probably even Gen Zs, tampons are probably the most popular ones, but also equally seem to be one of the most the ones that cause like the most problems, basically. But then this is the thing. This is what we've been doing. We've been looking into it because somebody left a comment on this video of ours, which made me go, please tell me that's not true, which was basically the amount of lead that is found in sanitary products. Apparently it's so ridiculously high that it's probably like beyond the legal limit. So I thought, please, for the love of God, tell me that is not true, because we've literally just found out about the testing. And I was like, admittedly, I've never really done too much research into like tampons, sanitary products, whether they're safe, because you just assume that they are, don't you? Whereas actually, when I looked into it, there is a study that was done relatively recently, everybody, that looked into toxic metals that were found in tampons. And this was 2024. 2024. So it's not like this research was done 10 years ago and they found a high amount of levels of toxic metals. This was done 2 years ago. So they tested 14 brands. The study, if anyone's interesting, is Berkeley and Columbia. It was 2024. They did 30 tampons across 14 brands, and within them, they found 16 different toxic metals. Lead was detected in 100% of the tampons that were tested. And this is the bit that gets me, because we've all heard of one of these, and I think we all associate this with bloody murdering people. Other metals included arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and nickel, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then it gets worse. The amount of lead that is found within these products is 10 times the legal limit allowed to be in food. Just gonna let that sink in, everybody. That's ridiculous, isn't it? And then the thing is, like, yes, people would argue, but we're not digesting it or ingesting it. So maybe it's like tolerated a bit better by the body. But actually, the vagina, sorry, everybody, I'm going to use real terms here. The vagina, or more specifically, the vaginal wall, is so incredibly absorbent that actually you can probably get chemicals go into your bloodstream a lot quicker going up your foof than actually if you ingested it. So then that argument is kind of void. God, like, how did we not know about this? And like I said, this was 2024 that this happened. It's not like they found this out 10, 20 years ago and things have changed. It was 2024 and they've not done anything about it yet. The FDA are still reviewing everything to, like, hopefully changes are going to be made. But like, what are your thoughts, Hayley? Like, how does that make you feel hearing that?
Shocked, but not shocked. I think it's infuriating again that women have not been informed, I guess. Like, we've not heard of this. And I've not heard of this until you've shared that. I'm just out here going, wow, we are just purchasing products without really knowing what we're purchasing and what we're doing. I have to say, from having a little look into it, that just because you're exposed to certain chemicals doesn't automatically mean that you are in really, really big danger. Something's going to happen. I'm going to assume that they've done the test on the tampons and found all of these different chemicals and toxic metals, but they've tested the actual tampons themselves. Imagine what they've not yet done is actually do internal tests, actually look at the impact that has internally. And I'm going to imagine that vaginal tissue absorbs toxic metals in a very different way to other parts of the body. And I imagine that that's quite hard to study, to be honest with you. I think you'd have lots of ethical considerations with it, basically. You can't kind of have a group of women and ask them to insert these things into their vagina over a period of time, and then like a control group where women don't do that and see what happens. I think it's quite a hard thing to study.
You'd need to like start with a baseline of having not used the products to see what you're like naturally showing in terms of like the levels of these heavy metals, not toxic metals, but heavy metals in your system, and then using the products to see if it changes, I suppose. Whereas a lot of people, especially like 18 or above, who would be the sort of people selected for these sort of trials, likely have already used some sort of sanitary product before anyway. And like this is just with tampons. We can maybe potentially assume that these are also in your pads as well, because that's a whole other ball game going on there with like your little knicker nappies, isn't it? But this was so considering this was done in 2024, this is the first study that was testing tampons for metals, like the first, like the only one, and it's taken like up until this point to test them basically and see what is actually going on in them, which makes me wonder what led to that. What made someone suddenly be like, I think we better check these for heavy metals? Like, was there suddenly like an influx of people complaining of certain problems to then trigger that? Because usually there's always a reason why people need to suddenly do a little bit of research into something. So I don't know. But yeah, for the most part, kind of like what you said, like we don't know if there's really any adverse effects from all of this. And just because, you know, this very shocking data has come forward doesn't necessarily mean that like suddenly your risk of cancers and things like that are suddenly sky high. We don't know that, but there isn't any research to say that it is. But this was only found 2 years ago. So at the same time, it's kind of like, well, is it because there's just not been any time to kind of be checking all of these things?
Yeah.
So it's kind of scary a little bit. It's the unknown. So we can't say that it's doing all of this very terrible stuff to your body. Like, we're not going to scaremonger. But at the same time, we also got to try and just keep in the back of our minds that there's only been 2 years So maybe they've just not researched it and checked it.
Something that this has really made me reflect on is, as parents, often when your children reach a certain age, you might have the talk about sexual interaction, or you would have the talk about drinking alcohol or smoking or doing drugs. You would talk to them about the risks of doing such things, and you would talk to them about how to do things safely, any sort of critical thinking about certain decisions that you're making in your life. A lot of families will do that about diets as well. Think about sugar, trying to minimize how much sugar you're exposed to, and all of those kind of things, because parents are generally aware of these kind of things. Whereas when it comes to menstruation and sanitary products, I certainly didn't ever have a conversation about what was the right product to use and what were the pros and cons of using that, and was there a risk of using it. I was very much at a very young age when I started my period. I think I was around 12 or 13. I was just handed something like, this is what you do. I think it was a tampon, actually. This is what you do. My mum kind of explained how I would insert it. As I think I mentioned in the last episode, I was like, it just didn't feel right to me. Showing something in my vagina, it just, nah. So I never actually used tampons for a very, very long time. And even now I'm a little bit not a big fan of them. But there was never a conversation. There was never the information giving about different products. And I found that quite scary the more that we're learning. And what I hope is that by talking about this a bit more, raising awareness, maybe parents can start to have those conversations with their girls when they do start their periods, because I do think that girls should have more of a choice around what they want to use. Whereas I do think that a lot of parents will automatically go for pads or tampons, whereas actually there are other options out there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably because that's all they've ever known. Like our mums, our older sisters, that's all they've ever known, because that's what their mums and their like older female family members were using. And it's just come from there, hasn't it? It's the same with like the idea of you go on a contraceptive pill around 13 years old to help control your periods. And it's like, God, really? Are we still doing that? Some people, yes, need to do that. But like, really, that's frosted on people still. But I mean, I'm trying to think back when I was young. There is one session I had in middle school. So I would have been like year 5, 6, 7 or 8. So just before period times, I suppose. And I remember someone did come in and do talks, and they demonstrated pads and they demonstrated tampons, but it was just those two items. And I remember they were talking about pads that had wings and pads that didn't have wings, and like super absorbent tampons versus like the tiny ones. So it was very much like a pads or tampons. And they gave us these little BB packs that had 5 pads in. They had like nighttime pads in, and they had like a couple of tampons or something like that. I remember putting in like a knicker drawer, a sock and knicker drawer, deep down, because obviously I hadn't started my period at this point. And I remember when I first started, I actually opened that up, and I think that was the first thing I've used. So they're like years out of date or years old, but I remember using them. I don't know. And my mum, to be fair, when I was the same as you, so I couldn't use tampons for such a long time. But I remember when I tried to do it, my mum was on the other side of the bathroom door coaching me through the door. And she was like, right, you want to stick one leg up on the toilet? And I was just like, I don't want to do that. And she was like, Abby, just to stick one leg up at the toilet. She said, you got to pull it out. That's it. And then you got to try and find where it goes in. And you're just going to make sure it goes all the way. Make sure it's all the way up, because otherwise it's going to feel uncomfortable. And I was like, I don't like it, Mum. I don't want to do it. And then in the end, she was like, it's fine. We don't have to do it. Don't have to do it. We can just wear pads. So I wore pads for like a year.
But I don't know if people can see my face here. I'm really squeamish. Anything to do with the body really grosses me out. So as Abby's talking about that, and I'm imagining, and I'm just like, that's disgusting. Why? Like, if I had a daughter, I would absolutely not be standing there on the opposite side going, put your leg up on the toilet and insert it into your vagina. Just can't do that. I would just give a pad.
I suppose, though, like, this is the thing, isn't it? Like, some people get squeamish at the idea and be like, I couldn't do that with my mum. And like, there are definitely a lot of conversations that I can't have with my mum. But actually, at the same time, I think a lot of people would listen to that and be like, oh, I think that's really great that your mum did that. Because how else do you, if you've never done it before, and they're a bit fiddly, everyone knows with the bloody tampons, you've got to pull them out and make sure, like, if you've got to get it right the first time, if you can't get it in, you push it and it's already half out, you're like, you can't reset it really, you've got to use another one. So actually, the closest you can get to someone showing you how to use them, other than watching maybe a YouTube video, which I don't even know they had back then, is a older female who knows how to do this stuff, probably talking you through how to do it. Also, some things I want to highlight as well about the research into what else was going on about tampons, because the more of this stuff that I unearthed, I was just like, Oh my God. So one of the other thing is that we kind of touched on anyway in last week's episode about like the difference between like male medicine and female medicine is that there is massive research gap in menstrual products. So very little research has been done to measure chemicals in tampons, which we've just discussed, and basically a general research into menstrual products, despite the fact that they're used by like 50 to 80% of menstruating people. So like think about like food that's heavily regulated and tested, cosmetics as well, and medicines. Tampons are probably more commonly used than like medical devices and medical testing. Yet they're just not routinely tested. And actually, there hasn't really been much research done with them,
Mm.
which is really interesting. And it makes you wonder why. And like, I hate always kind of bringing things back to like the man versus woman thing. But like, is it because it's a female product and they just think, well, actually, what's the point? It's only for one half of the population. I don't know. But it just seems so odd that they're not being like routinely checked. And like now it's taken like the last couple of years for them to actually realize, oh shit, we might have fucked up with these sanitary products. Like, I bet they were hating life when that all got released as well. They're also, like we said last time, they're not tested with realistic situations. Like they're not tested with menstrual blood. They've only recently been tested with human blood in general, which was 2023. But like they've not tested the absorbency on the actual bodily fluid that they were designed for. And I just find that so crazy. I just find that so crazy.
Yeah. I think, again, you said, not to always blame men, but ultimately, when we look at the history of medicine, male bodies were treated as the default, and women,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read into this, but women previously and probably continue to be seen as too hormonal, too difficult to work with, their bodies too complicated. So we're just going to use the male default. So that has been the way that it's always been until not all that long ago, when we still have a long way to go. So that's one side of medical research. But then add on menstruation. Now, menstruation, there's this big stigma about it, isn't there? And in some cultures still, they view menstruation as something really bad, something evil. Actually, we live in a country where menstruation is kind of accepted and it's fine. We kind of all know that girls bleed. Whereas in other cultures, it's almost not accepted. It's really, really sad. I really feel for so many women that live in parts of the world where they're just hated for it. But add on the whole menstruation taboo, people would whisper about periods. It was something that we just couldn't talk about. It was something that was meant to be kept hidden. So, of course, that has impacted the research and the ability to test certain products and to actually explore this. And then I imagine, as we've kind of already touched upon, that even like gaining ethical approval, like how do you do these studies? How can you do real studies that are real life, real life relevance? I imagine that's quite hard as well. So
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that there are some great people out there really pushing for better research.
Good. And I
Female
think
scientists.
if people, just the general public, people are listening to this, I imagine majority will be females who already know the importance of all this stuff. But if there are any men listening as well, like please see that this is a big problem. This isn't good. Like if anything, it should just kind of like put a little light bulb on in your head and kind of go, oh, this is terrible. Like why are our like loved ones, our women in our lives, not being taken seriously with this stuff? But then I don't know if that's going to happen, because like even today, like in today's world, like I know men who don't want to hear about periods as a partner, and like with previous partners, if it's my time of the month, I can happily say like, oh, it's my time of the month sort of thing, but we won't know any more information about that. Like, God forbid I talk about anything to do with my period. It's like, ew, I don't want to hear about your period. And it's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck, dude? Like,
Yeah.
you're going to fucking listen to me talk about my period, because it happens once a month for almost a week for the majority of my life. And actually, as somebody who doesn't want to have children, and my partners who have not wanted to have children, period is a bloody good sign. So we need to celebrate it, not make it seem like it's ew, icky, because that's just so ridiculous. And then shit like this happens with the lack of research, because you got all these boys who are grossed out by periods going into science going, ew, we don't want to test tampons on menstrual blood. I don't want to touch it. I know they don't do that, but you can see how it could kind of unravel.
I love what you just said about, celebrating that you have your period because it means that you're not pregnant. And actually, I do that as well. Although my husband has had the snip, so technically we, can't fall pregnant. It's still something that we celebrate every month. I don't know why, it's a bit weird. But like, yes, I'm not pregnant. But also, having your period regularly is actually a good sign that that part of your body is functioning healthily. So I do think that although periods can be really uncomfortable for lots of women, I know that lots of people have real issues with their period pain, and I really feel for all of you. So of course, for that group of people, you may not agree. But if your periods are slightly annoying, bit uncomfortable, get a little bit of pain, but manageable, I think that's a good thing, because that means that your body is, in some senses, working how it's meant to work. So I celebrate that on a monthly basis. And actually, if you're listening and you notice that your periods are not regular, or you're getting really severe pain, something just feels a little bit off, and you haven't gone to a medical professional about that, that could be your body basically trying to tell you that something's not quite right. So I would just suggest you go and get that checked out, because again, what tends to happen is you might go to your doctor about some of these things. And like we said last week, women's pain is often kind of dismissed, overlooked, ignored.
Yeah.
So even if you tried before and not really got very far, seek a second opinion, go back, really push about it. You should be having a regular period.
Absolutely, you should. And then literally just as like a second to that as well, like as much as me and Hayley joking about, we got a period, at least we're not pregnant, woohoo. That's coming from two people who, obviously Hayley does not want to have any more children. I don't want to have children. So that's just our lives and how we see our periods. But for some people who want to have children, who can't have children, or don't know that they can't have children, things like your period, again, like Hayley said, could be one of the first signs that something is happening. And so people need to be talking about their periods and talk to your partners about your periods. And if they dare do the whole, I don't want to hear about your period, then fucking smear it in their face, because they need to get over it. They need to get over it, because it can highlight health problems. It can highlight infertility or fertility problems, all sorts. So pay attention to your periods, and boys, stop being pathetic and talk about periods. It's not going to make you any less of a man. Anyway.
Amen to that.
Amen to that. Let's talk about periods, baby. Let's talk about you and me. And then the last thing that I kind of wanted to touch on again was the gender bias and male-dominated research, which you've kind of already spoken about, Hayley, where male bodies used as the default model in medicine and women were excluded from clinical trials pretty much before 1990s. From what I gathered anyway, from doing my own research, any medical testing that was done kind of before the 1990s, women were just excluded from the trials. So even the 90s, like I was born in the 90s, guys. I'm a 90s baby. Like we love Mr. Blobby. We love Barbie. But even at the time of us being born, Hayley, women had only maybe a couple of years been allowed to join clinical trials. And that is just disgusting. Disgusting. I'm hoping that things are getting better. We obviously know that they're getting better, much better. So they're trying, and it's going to take a long time to catch up on all this stuff. And actually, it might be that all of this more modern stuff and like needing to get women involved with the science is why some of these like 2023 studies are being done and the 2024 studies have been done that we've spoken about. And so as much as we're there just like, are you kidding me? There's lead in our tampons. It is a good sign, because it means something's happened. Someone's woken up one day and they're now gone, shit, we better bring women into this. Like these period products are for them. We better fucking bring them into this. Yeah. So it is a positive sign.
Well, I think also we've started to see an increase, haven't we, of women entering the STEM industry, actually going into these kind of jobs and doing research. Previously women weren't even allowed to vote, let alone be a scientist, So we have come a long way. So I guess what I would do is encourage people that are listening, your daughters, female friends, to go into these industries. If you are really interested in this, you really want to make a difference, and you're really into like science and stuff like that, then absolutely let's get more women into that industry. I wish I could do it. I can't stand blood. I actually think you'd be quite happy doing something like that, Abby. Knowing you and your like weird interest in bodies and stuff, especially dead body.
Yeah, I love basically anything biology, physiology. I love it. I mean, I did want to go into like acne research when I was a little bit younger.
You did, didn't you?
Yeah, and that was like something I considered before I ended up going into the career that I'm in. But even still, like if someone said to me like, Abby, if a magic genie could come and, what would be your perfect career? Like I love my career and I worked really hard for it. I love it. But if a genie could come and be like, you could have any skill set that you want and you could have any job that you want, what would you do? One would probably be an astronaut, but two would probably be a mortician. Like I don't want to find out how people died. I just want to be left with the bodies, and I'll make them look pretty and I'll fill in the bullet holes that are in their heads, and I just find so much peace with that. Equally though, I would love to dissect a human body, but alas, that's not my career. Everyone's safe, don't worry, I'm not going to touch your dead bodies. But yeah, no, I love all the science stuff, love it. Really quickly as well, what I wanted to talk about, because something that's really well known with tampons is something called toxic shock syndrome, which is not a fun party, guys. We don't want that. And one of the things that I was worried about when I was doing all of this research is like, oh my God, is all of like these chemicals that they're finding in these heavy metals, is this going to lead to toxic shock syndrome? And is that why we get toxic shock syndrome? Oh my God, say toxic shock syndrome again, Abby. So what is toxic shock syndrome? I think it's important that we actually know what it is so you know what to look out for. We're going to call it TSS. It's a rare but serious illness caused by bacteria. And it's not caused by chemical poisons or such. The main culprits are, I'm going to end up butchering this, Staphylococcus aureus and Streptococcus pyogenes. These bacteria produce toxins that enter the bloodstream and they trigger systemic shock. So it's kind of like an infection and a toxin response. So you will find yourself feeling quite unwell if you find that you've got toxic shock syndrome. So if you find any like unease or something doesn't feel right, then please go and see a doctor about it. When we look into it, there is no clear evidence that links the chemicals that are found in tampons or tampons in general to toxic shock syndrome. It's bacteria based. So it is very much, as far as we're aware at this current time, it's the idea that you kind of keep your tampons in for a bit too long, ladies. And so I don't want people to kind of come away from listening to this episode suddenly wanting to completely boycott tampons because they think it's going to lead to toxic shock syndrome because of these chemicals. We don't know what the chemicals can do yet, but there is no evidence to say that's the cause of toxic shock syndrome. It is the bacteria growth and oxygen levels and wear time and all of that fun stuff. So basically, just a reminder, once again, everybody, toxic shock syndrome is a thing. Please remember to change your tampons regularly. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I think some of the typical symptoms can include things like a sudden fever, really high fever, vomiting, diarrhea, rash, muscle aches, confusion, redness of the eyes, all of that kind of stuff. And if you notice any of these symptoms that can develop quite suddenly, you are advised to seek urgent medical care as quickly as you can. It is really rare, especially with the number of people that do use tampons. But yeah, it can have very severe consequences. So please, 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 please just be aware of it. Don't worry too much about it because it is quite rare, but I think it's good to have that awareness.
I think when you look into it, a lot of the time when there's been incidences of it has actually been when somebody hasn't realised that they've already got a tampon in and they've maybe gone to bed and they've left it and then they've gone to put another one in and the previous tampon has just gone like straight up there. And then obviously that's gone a bit too high and the body's gone, we don't want this. What is this doing here near our fucking ovaries? So yeah, just really be careful. Don't go to sleep with anything inside your foof, guys, girls, and guys maybe.
People that menstruate.
People that menstruate.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so I think in this episode, we kind of clarified that we need to, one, raise awareness of menstruating people, and we need more research done. We need women to be included in the research so that we can ensure that products are safe. We've talked about how important it is to ensure that girls and women can make informed decisions about products that they are using, hence the need for more research, but also raising awareness, which I hope that's what we're doing today, so that we can be talking about it more with our daughters, with our sisters, with our female friends, to ensure that we can make those decisions. And ultimately, if people want to wear tampons, they can wear tampons. You know, as we've said, there's not any really significant evidence at this moment saying that you are going to develop a really awful disease. However, there is research coming out suggesting or showing that there are certain substances, metals within the products.
Metals, chemicals, all sorts.
And then just to kind of bring this towards an end, we thought it'd be really good just to talk about some alternative products that you might want to use if you are starting to feel that tampons really aren't your thing, whether that's because you are concerned about what's in them, or if you're just a bit like me that doesn't like inserting those kind of things into your vagina. When we think about alternative products, I'm just going to go through a few that we're aware of and just kind of very briefly talk about the pros and cons of them. There isn't a universally safest option of a sanitary product. It will very much depend on your body, what your hygiene practices are, your sensitivities, the flow that you have, whether you've got a really heavy flow or a medium flow, and also your medical history. So of course, as people always say, we're not medical experts, we're just here talking and raising awareness. So if you have any concerns, please make sure that you seek advice from a medical professional. However, in terms of alternatives, one of the most commonly used alternatives is a pad, a disposable pad. So some of the pros of using a pad is that you have no internal insertion. So you don't have to put something inside of you, which I'm a big fan of. That means that you therefore automatically have a reduced risk of TSS, which Abby has just talked about, although we have said that it is quite rare. They're very easy to use and they're really good as an overnight option because, as Abby has mentioned, you're not then going to sleep with something inserted inside of you. In terms of cons, you can get sweating and irritation from wearing them. The adhesives and or fragrance that are in them can irritate some people's skin. And they are quite wasteful. So obviously you're going to be disposing them, putting them in the bin means that there's a lot of waste. However, you can get some reusable pads nowadays. They do cost a little bit more. They're more ethical, definitely worth looking out for. So some of the better choices are for you to get unscented ones if you're concerned about things like irritation. And you can get some like a breathable top layer and think about changing them regularly if you're not concerned about the waste element. And so that's quite a good option. Obviously, I've mentioned the reusable cloth pads, which again, very similar pros to the normal pads. But some of the cons are that they do need washing and drying. And they're not as convenient when you're out and about. If you need to change it, you're not just going to kind of randomly take up a cloth pad to the sink in a public restaurant, for example. But they're really great.
Why not?
Can you imagine
Why
doing
not?
that? I mean, I think Abby probably would. I definitely wouldn't. So maybe it's something you want to use when you know that you can easily change them. But of course, if you needed to be out and about a lot, then they might not be a great option. We then move on to menstrual cups. I've personally never used these. They give me a bit of the ick. I don't know, Abby, if you've ever had a go at one at all?
I haven't, no, but I want to start using them because people do say that they're really, really good. I guess I don't know what the research is in terms of the material that's used, but I think it's like a silicone. So I don't know if that's treated any better. Don't know, but apparently really, really good. Less chances of like toxic shock syndrome and things like that. And reusable.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the pros of using them are they're reusable, long-term or long wear guidance. You have to follow the guidance from the particular product that you buy. So make sure you read into that. There's also a lower recurring cost because they're reusable. And many people find less dryness with these than using tampons, which is positive. Some of the cons are that it is a learning curve to start using them, which is probably one of the reasons that I've not yet wanted to experiment with them because I just find the whole thing a little bit tricky. But I think, as Abby has said, I've spoken to quite a few women that have used them and they're like, oh my God, once you get into them, they're an absolute game changer. But you just have to go through that period of learning. They do need sterilizing and clean handling. So you need to make sure that your hygiene practice is really up to, high standards. It is an internal device, so you are going to have to insert and remove. So if you find that uncomfortable like me, then maybe it might not be the product for you. There have been some rare cases of TSS reported with them, but it is much less common. So these are a good option, apparently, if you are comfortable with internal products as an alternative to tampons. We've also got them period underwear, which, Abby, you've kind of like celebrated these. So I'm assuming you've tried them maybe?
Yeah. I don't think this is the right word for it actually, but there's this idea of people being kind of free bleeders, which is basically where you don't use a pad, you don't use a tampon or like a moon cup or anything like that. Like the free bleeding is kind of you just let it come out, but obviously while still protecting your clothes. And that's where period pants can be really, really good. There's especially like organic ones from like, I think I said this last time, from small businesses. They're reusable. You put them on, they're absorbent, less chemicals, better, less irritation. And then you just wash them and pop like a new pair on. And I think they're a really good way to go. And they're becoming much more popular as well.
Literally, that was the research that I found. So very, very popular nowadays, actually growing in popularity, which is really exciting. So yeah, some of the pros are that they're external, they're comfortable, they're really good if you've got a light or moderate flow. Whereas I imagine if you've got a really heavy flow, this might not be the best option for you. And they're really good to use overnight. Some of the cons are that they do need washing. There is that upfront cost of having to purchase them initially, and they're not super duper cheap. But if you calculate the cost long term, you're probably going to be saving money, and you are going to need multiple pairs. However, they are a really, really good option. So those are some products for you to think about. It's even got me thinking about like, why have I not actually experimented some of these? I know about all of them. I've thought about them before, but I still default to using the same thing. So I'm actually going to go in and practice what I preach and try some new products.
Yeah. I think you should. Maybe we could do like a review. We could do a review episode. We'll be like, here's my week using period pants. And then we'll do like daily vlogs or whatever and be like, just put my period pants on.
I like that idea, actually.
Yeah, and also before we kind of get to the very, very last part where we ask Bob, if there, if there are people out there who are struggling to be able to afford sanitary products, the NHS does offer, I think, them free. And there are a lot of companies or businesses which will allow you to order them for free as well. I think yeah, at the moment it will be tampons and it will be pads, but ultimately that, if they're available for you. And even like now in a lot of public bathrooms, they're starting to become more commonly there and left out for people. So you don't necessarily have to struggle with it. There are things out there that can get you access to them if needed. But yeah, shall we?
Okay.
Shall we ask Bob what he thinks?
We shall. So this week we are asking Bob, my ChatGPT, a question related to the topic of today. So I wanted to know, Bob, get ready for it. If you were a female human, what sanitary products would you wear? Now, I wasn't sure whether Bob was going to be like, I can't answer that question because I'm an AI. But no, Bob did answer the question and gave me quite an interesting answer. So Bob says, if I were a female human, I would choose the product that respects my body, my comfort, and my schedule. Probably period underwear at home, pads when busy, and a cup if I felt elite.
Ooh.
I would not be suffering monthly just to keep up appearances.
Do you know what's interesting about that though? Bob, who is an AI, who's not even female, didn't say tampons.
Yes, that was my thought. Yeah, so we've got a little bit of kind of free bleeding, pads when needed, and then cup when it feels elite. And I like the last bit. I would not suffer monthly just to keep up appearances. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to read into that as in like, I wouldn't just use tampons because that's the thing to use. I don't even think tampons are that comfortable, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they could be, they're okay. They're fine. If they're in enough, then like you don't even notice they're there. But like, yeah, if you get like on the last day, girls, if you know, on the last day where you're like still bleeding a little bit, maybe I'll pop one in, pulling that bad boy out when it's almost dry. Oh, God, it's horrific. Like you want to fucking get some Sudocrem on there, girl, after. So they're not the most comfortable, but for the most part, like I will hold my hands up and be like, I've used tampons most of my life and they have usually always been effective. So we'll maybe still continue to use them every now and then, but definitely want to switch over to some of these more comfortable things. But yeah, maybe watch this space, guys, because you might be getting a follow-up review from Haley and I on moon cups and period knickers and all of those fun things. We'll be the guinea pigs and we'll test them all for you.
And we really hope that you've learned something from today and that you just feel like you're a little bit more informed. And if you are going to experiment, please enjoy. Let us know. We'd love to hear your experiences.